Hello everyone, look at the quilt up on my design wall. Today I'm going to show you how I made this quilt with the screen printing process on cotton fabric. I cannot wait to share this with you. I'm Lisa with Lisa Capen Quilts, and if this is your first time on my channel, I would love it if you hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you get notified when I make all kinds of fun new videos. Today, I'm going to be showing you how you can use your cutting machines like a Brothers Scan and Cut, Silhouette, Cricut, all of the different types of cutting machines. Using a crafting vinyl, you can create your own stencils that you can screen print with. So let me talk about some of the benefits of using a vinyl sticker in the screen printing process versus a more traditional photo emulsion screen printing process. One of the reasons why I love using vinyl stencils in my screen printing is because it's super quick. I do not have to go through a complicated process to make the screens to do custom work on my quilts. The cleanup is super duper fast, which is also really nice. I can get lots and lots of prints from one stencil. From the stencils that we're creating in today's video, I did all of these blocks with no printing issues, which is fantastic. I could have kept on printing and printing blocks from the stencils that we create in this video. However, one of the downsides is once you're done with your project and you clean your screen, there goes your stencil. So if you want to use the same design in another project, you simply just cut out another stencil, which took my machine 3 minutes to cut out the stencil, and then you reweed it out and you're ready to create this design again. Also, one of the benefits about using vinyl with your screen printing is that you can customize the size of your design. You can also select which elements in your design that you want to print. I'm going to show you that in today's video. Let's see. What else? One more thing. You don't have to store a place for all your screens. Using a photo emulsion, a more traditional screen printing process, is a process. And once you create a screen, you probably want to save it so that you can keep on recreating that design in other projects, which means you have to store that screen somewhere in your studio. And you have to have other screens if you want to do something else. With this process, using a vinyl screen, a vinyl stencil on your screen, you really only have to have one screen, and you can do unlimited amounts of printing designs with one screen. I'm going to put links down in the description box of all the products that I use in today's video. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, before we get to cutting out the vinyl stencils, let's talk about this quilt design for just a second and where I got my fabrics. I went to the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival 2 weekends ago. That was so much fun. I saw many of you there, so it was great to say hi and to get some hugs and to see some faces, put faces with names that I recognize. So it was really great to see you. When I was there at the quilt show, I purchased some fabric. And I love these fabrics. It's some Quilter's cotton. There are a few little batik prints in here. And once I got home, I realized that I did not have enough fabric to do this quilt top. So paired with some leftover fabric from the Happiness is Homemade quilt, I paired the lighter teal and the darker teal fabrics left over from that quilt with the fabrics that I purchased at the quilt show. And wow, it gave such a bright, contrasting brilliance to this fabric selection. Paired with those fabrics, I was able to have enough fabric to design this quilt. Now, if you want to design a quilt that is this size, I'm going to put the size up here on the screen. I cut my stencils and my quilt blocks at 8.5 by 8.5 inches. So to get to this quilt size, I cut 63 blocks. They are arranged with 7 blocks in a row and 9 rows all together. So that's 63 blocks at 8.5 by 8.5. So let's go ahead. Oh, I wanted to let you know the borders. For the borders, I cut my borders at 2.5 inches wide and 8.5 inches long. And I just arranged them around on the quilt layout. You'll see that up here on the screen. All of my blocks laid out and ready to start the screen printing process. So let's go ahead and move over to the computer. I'm going to show you how to bring in the SVG. You could design your own cutting stencil. The possibilities are endless with this method, but I'm going to show you how I bring in the stencils that I've created, how you can actually alter them and cut out different parts of the stencil, and then we can start printing. So let's take a look at these two SVG files. Let's bring in the first one. I'm going to choose File. We'll open the floral tile and bring that in right on the screen. So the very first thing that I like to do, because you can resize this to fit the size block that you're cutting, is I'm going to select all of my objects. You'll see little blue boxes go around each one of the objects. I'm going to right click right on that design and hit group. When you do that, it groups every single one of the objects as one piece, and you can move it around and you're not going to misplace any of your pieces. Once you do that, right here on the bottom of your screen, there we go. Right here, you can resize this to whatever size you want, is up to 12 inches or the size of your mat. The size quilt block that I'm making is 8.5 inches, and so I'm going to bring it right to 8.49, and that's good right there. So you could move this right on your mat wherever you want to place your vinyl, and you're ready to go. One of the things, let me move you back up a little bit. One of the things I wanted to do with my quilt block is alter the design a little bit, because I want to use two colors of ink. Right now you can see all these different colors. This darker circle right in the middle will actually cut out a circle that you could remove, and then you would just have a single ring right in the middle of your quilt. I want to actually do this middle inner circle in a gold color and all of the rest of the design in a black. So I'm going to right click again and hit ungroup after I've resized the block. Now I can select this piece and move it off the board. Let's go ahead and delete it for a minute. And then I can send this over to my cutter, and it's going to cut out everything you see here. So I would send it to the cutter just like that and cut that out, and that's what I've done. Then I'll come back to this design, and let's bring back that little circle. All I did was hit Control Z on my keyboard, and it brought back my circle. Now I can go ahead and start deleting all of these objects in here, because now I want to make another stencil that just, whoops, I did not want to get rid of my box, that has just the inner circle inside. Now that all the other objects are gone, I'm going to, on the keyboard, select the square that's going to cut the exact size of our quilt block out in the vinyl, and I'm going to hold down the shift button and select our circle that we want placed right in the middle. I'm going to go to edit and align right in the center, and then edit one more time and align it the other way as well. And now my circle is aligned right in the middle of this block. I'm going to group this together once again, so now I can move this right on my mat and I don't have to worry about misplacing that middle circle. And now I'm going to cut out a second stencil so that I can do my gold color. Let's go ahead and bring in the other design. Here's our other design. We can group this together. We can resize this now. I'm bringing mine to 8.49, and I can move it right over on my mat just a little bit. Now you could cut this all out. It's going to cut little circles inside your bigger circles. You could, if you wanted to, let's see, let's ungroup this. You could pick all of these objects and cut out your design this way with the solid circles and solid diamonds. I'm going to actually make 2 stencils. I'm going to cut this out as 1 stencil and then delete everything in the inside, and then I will, let's see, let's move this over. I'll send that to the cutter and then delete all of these objects and then make a second stencil for my gold color. Again, that's just one of the alterations that you could do with these 2 designs. Now I'm going to be cutting out 4 stencils because I'm using 2 colors as I just showed you. However, you could just cut yours out as 1 stencil for each design. Once you cut out your stencils, we're ready to start the weeding process. Once you've cut out your stencil using your cutting machine, you're ready to weed out the parts of your design that we want to print. My favorite tool for weeding is an X-Acto knife. Just grabs those vinyl pieces so easily. I'm going to go through and remove each one of the little pieces in my stencil. Don't forget, once you're done weeding out all of the extra little pieces in your design, you're also going to remove the outer edge, all the extra vinyl around your block. Because I'm doing 2 different colors in the printing process, I have 2 different stencils for each design. Once you have your stencils all weeded out, we're ready to go ahead and transfer these stencils to our screen. So I'm going to start by using some transfer tape and apply that to our stencil. Burnish that pretty good and remove the backing from our stencil. Make sure all of the little bits of your stencil stay on the transfer tape. I'm still in a process of trying to find a really good transfer tape that I love. So far I've tried 2 different transfer tapes and they are a little difficult to work with. Once you have your design on the transfer tape, we're going to put it on the underside of our screen and burnish that really well. And now comes the trickiest part of this whole process, is removing the transfer tape. Like I mentioned, I've tried 2 different transfer tapes and they are just so sticky that I have a hard time pulling away the transfer tape and leaving the stencil on my screen. So if you have tried this process and you know of a transfer tape that you really love, that is easy to remove and leave your stencil behind on the screen, I would love to hear in the comments section down below. And I'm sure other people would appreciate that knowledge as well. Once you've removed the transfer tape, let's go ahead and burnish the stencil one more time on the screen so that it is really well adhered to the bottom of our screen. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and set up a template on the base of our printing screen so that we can line up each block exactly perfect each time we want to print. Just going to do that with some masking tape and a piece of paper, lining it up with the stencil and checking it as we go along. The very last part of the prepping process is to mask off the rest of your screen that you don't want the ink to go through, and that just helps keep our work area nice and clean and helps with the cleanup process. Just using some painter's tape, you could use masking tape tape off all of the extra parts of the screen. And once you're done, let's go ahead and remove, like a checkerboard, every other block from our quilt layout. And now we can start printing. Let's start with our floral blocks. Today I'm going to be using the Speedball Fabric Ink. For this quilt, I used just about the entire jar of fabric ink. So just to give you an idea of how much ink you'll need to do 63 blocks, I have just a little tiny bit left over in this jar, and it was brand new. Using a scrap piece of paper, I'm going to lay that underneath of my block. Going to position my block right up against my template that we've already created. I thought that if I taped the corners, it would keep the fabric in place after the printing, but we're going to find out that that's not going to work. I'm going to apply some ink to my screen, lift my screen up a little bit, and flood that design with the ink, and then lower my screen and squeegee the ink across the design. See, there you go. The fabric stuck to the bottom of the screen anyway. So let's go ahead and remove those tape pieces. But look at this print. Isn't that gorgeous? So I'm going to bring you along as I print out a few of these blocks with you. And although it looks like we're using an extraordinarily large amount of ink, the actual print process only takes a little bit of that. So we're just going to keep scooping off the excess ink and reprinting with it. Carefully pulling the fabric from the bottom of the screen and moving to the next block. It took me about a little less than an hour to print over 30 different blocks using the floral stencil. So the process actually goes pretty quick. I'm sure you could do it faster. And I'm sure you could probably take your time more than I did, and it would take longer. What I did was turn on some music and just enjoyed the creative process and the fun surprise of how the design looks on each one of the different fabrics. Now you could be done at this point with just one color. I've chosen to do 2 colors on my design, so I'll show you here in just a minute what that looks like. But isn't that so pretty? I absolutely love that. So once you have all of your blocks printed, you're going to want to find a space where they can just sit and dry really well before you move on. Now, because I am doing a different second color with my design, I've applied the second stencil and all of my fabrics are nice and dry, and I can go ahead and print that inner circle in my design. Again, this part is totally optional. To be 100% honest with you, I would have probably rethought this process and just cut out the middle circle and had the fabric shine through the middle of my design. But we've already started, so there's no turning back now. And we're going to do this with both of our stencil designs. One of the things I love about creative quilts like this is that you could do them any size that you want. You could even make them wall quilts, which would add a pop of brilliance on your wall. So let me show you a couple of the layouts for these 2 different tile stencils. This is the layout that we are doing for our quilt. However, if you reverse the order of the tiles, your quilt would look something like this. However, you could also just cut out one stencil and make a quilt just like this. Isn't that amazing? I think that is so pretty. If you use the other tile design, look how brilliant that layout is. Isn't that so pretty? This is the layout that we are going to use for the quilt that I'm designing in this video. Again, you could make it any size you want, and that's part of the creative fun process. So now we can go ahead and start printing out the second design. I have it loaded up on my screen, and I'm just going to bring you along as I print a few of these blocks with you. Again, flooding the screen before we actually lower it on the fabric. And then squeegee the ink across our design. And there is that pretty block. So we'll just walk through as I print a few of these blocks with you. Again, you'll want to find a place that you can lay out all of these blocks and let them completely dry. Because I'm doing 2 colors on my design, I've let my blocks dry completely and I'm ready to move to the gold color for the second process of printing on my blocks. So the very next thing we want to do once our designs are really nice and dry is to heat press the ink. So I'm going to use my heat press to do this, and I have 4 designs up on my heat press. They are overlapping the edges just a little bit, but that's okay. They're nice and dry. My heat press is set at 320. We're going to press this for 40 seconds. You can use an iron to heat press your inks, and you'll want to look that up on the Googles to find out how long you would heat press with an iron. I'm going to cover this with a pressing sheet, and we will heat press each one of our blocks. Once you have heat pressed all of your individual blocks, we're ready to start sewing together our quilt. The first thing we're going to do is sew together our rows, just like you see here on the screen. I sewed together my blocks in rows using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I have them laid out in the order that the rows go in here on my frame. I like to press my seams in alternating directions. So the first row, I'll press all of my seams to the left. The second row, I'll press all of my seams to the right. And that way, when you're sewing your rows together, all of your seams nest perfectly in place. And that just allows for a more precise matching point with all of your blocks and all of your seams. What I like to do is after I attach each set of rows is just go ahead and press that seam Go ahead and get the pressing part out of the way as you advance through the quilt, adding each row from the top to the bottom of your quilt. Once your quilt starts getting some size, it gets a little bit trickier, but it's not difficult at all, and especially since we've nested those seams. Again, using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm just going to attach all of the rows all the way to the bottom, and then add that bottom little small piece of sashing to the bottom of our quilt. And just like that, we have our quilt. I say just like that. It actually took me 3 days. Yes, only 3 days though, for a custom one-of-a-kind quilt. The printing process took me 2 days because I let my blocks dry. I did the floral blocks on one day and let them dry really well. And then I collected all of those. And then the next day I did all of the other design and then let those dry really well. And then a day to piece together the quilt top. Now this is just the quilt top. I have not decided how I want to quilt this yet. I think I want to do some custom quilting. However, I did not want to wait before I published this video and shared this technique with you. So if you want to check out the progress of this quilt top, make sure to follow me on Facebook at Lisa Capen Quilts on Facebook. I'll put a link down in the description box. You can go and follow me there. And as I quilt this quilt, I will be uploading pictures of the progress. So I'm really excited to start that part of the journey of this quilt with you. Now, if you decide to do the screen printing process and design your own quilt, I'd love to see pictures. You know I would. Join the Creative Crew group. A link for that will be down in the description box. And you can easily share your pictures and projects there with everybody. And we would all love to see your work. Okay, what do you think about this printing process? Pretty easy, right? I cannot wait to see what you create with this technique. And until I see you in the next video, who knows what we're doing next? I don't even know yet. Have fun creating, and we'll see you really soon. Bye, everybody.